Right, we've started. So, welcome to another exciting episode of Extraordinary Ordinary Women. And I'm Margarita, and I'm excited to be able to share with you stories of ordinary women in our community. Could even be your next door neighbour. Women who have had a dream or an idea and followed it through to fruition. Now, their stories will encourage you, uplift you, and hopefully inspire you to ignite the seeds of greatness within your heart. For it's through sharing that we come to realize that we're not all alone, that we're not Robinson Crusoe all alone on our island, but that there is, particularly now with social media, this network of truly amazing women who are eager to stretch out their hand with encouragement. Having found this for myself when my life was turned upside down, it's my gift to those women to be able to pay forward the gift of encouragement to others, the gift of encouragement they gave me. My guest today is a woman whose talents in the garden flow abundantly into her art studio. Now, I met Robyn almost 12 months ago when she and her husband were one of many who opened their town garden to the public as part of the New England Garden Festival Open Gardens. Robyn invited us to peek inside her studio nestled in the garden, where we delightedly beheld some glorious, glorious artwork, stunning artwork, in fact. In 2024, Robyn was a finalist in the Lethbridge Small Scale Art Prize. Now, I did some research about this, and this is no small, mean feat. This is absolutely accolade. So well done, Robyn. So in 2024, Robyn was a finalist in the Lethbridge Small Scale Art Prize, a finalist in the PLC Signature Art Prize, and in 2025, she was Artist in Residence at Chateau au Couveau. Her talk of her residency is what inspired me to invite Robyn to share her story with us today. So, without further ado, I have great pleasure in introducing you to Robyn Markey. Hello and welcome, Robyn.
Hello, Margarita, and hello to everyone who's listening today. Thank you for that very warm welcome. I'm excited to be here today to share my little bit of my story.
And I'm excited to have you here too, Robyn. Robyn, firstly, congratulations on your mammoth achievements. In my opinion, your work is so worthy of such recognition. Your love of flowers certainly shines through into your work. So how did you first become involved in painting flowers and then making it into a business?
Of course, you can imagine that's a really long story, so I'm going to try and just encapsulate that very quickly. But I have always been a garden lover, and I think my love of gardens and my artwork were two sort of separate things initially, and then they've come together to be joined. And gardens are places where you can find solace. You can outwork problems. You can have a fight with your husband and go and tell the flowers off about it without judgment. You know, they're great marriage counsellors. I love them because to me, I'm a Christian and I see God's creation out in the garden too. And I love it when I walk out there that I can feel peace and harmony and joy. It brings me great joy to be out there. And when I'm working in my studio, I try and capture those elements in my art. I make joyful art. I make no apologies about that. My artwork is there to uplift and bring joy to people's lives. So that's the connection. Turning it into a business has been more difficult. We moved to New South Wales about 6 years ago, and before that I was in South Australia, and I would just sell through Facebook. It was before Instagram became a huge thing, and then I had a break whilst we were travelling and we were settling here. We did a huge house and garden renovation, And it wasn't
Yes.
until those things were done that I got back into my art. And then it became very clear to me very quickly that I had to do business a different way. So I had to learn how to use Instagram and all that involves. That's my main selling tool. I had to set up a website, huge learning curve. I did a whole heap of courses. I worked with a mentor for several months, which was incredibly helpful. But I'm an older person too. I'm over 50. In fact, I'm over 60. I just turned 61. But
I say welcome to the club.
I know. So, those things weren't small things, and it would have been very easy just to give up. But I think when you're really passionate about something, there's this drive within you to keep going. And I feel a certain responsibility about using giftings too. I think when you've got a gift in something, I think there's for me, I feel like there's a responsibility to share it. And it's not just something I feel like I have to do. I really want to do it too.
Yes.
I feel I have real joy in sharing something that has brought me joy.
Yes, it reminds me of a quote I came across. If you have been blessed, then be a blessing unto others. Yes.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
yes. Now, you also mentioned floriography, which I was fascinated, and I have to say, that was a new word to my vocabulary.
It's an old word.
Yeah, new word to my vocabulary. Would you like to explain to our listeners, please, what
Sure.
floriography is?
Floriography is the name given to the language of flowers, and it's something that came about during Victorian times. If you can sort of cast your mind back, we're talking about to a time when people weren't always at liberty to talk to each other about emotional things, and it's usually linked with romantic things. So if a boy liked a girl, the colour of the flowers he gave would sometimes have a hidden message in them. Passion or romantic love or friendship, that friendly love. They would attach meanings to all kinds of different flowers. Lilies often were associated with death or passing
Yes.
of time. So I've hooked into that in my artwork because I like to put a narrative through, and I don't do it with every painting, but certainly when I'm painting flowers, and I do paint other things as well. I paint landscapes and still life, but when I have a floral element in a painting, I'll do research around that to start with. And sometimes it's floriography, sometimes it's more symbolism, and that can go back to cultural, religious, medicinal. Lots of plants have medicinal values. Sometimes it's historical. It could be an emblem that royalty have used to convey a meaning. And I gather those up in a kind of mind map, and that helps me create a narrative that I like to weave into my paintings, a story, because I think people want to be able to look at a painting and know that there's a story behind it. And quite often when people buy my paintings, I will let them know, did you know this is what I was thinking about when I painted this painting? And it gives them something to talk about at dinner parties, or someone admires the painting. And I think it's a little extra layer of value that they get that it's attached to their artwork.
Yes, which I found, just even listening to you now, very, very interesting, because you've done some beautiful still lifes. You've done some beautiful, I think the latest one I saw was the hydrangeas, which took my breath away. And they're beautiful pieces of work to simply behold, but to understand that there could be a whole story that you've gathered that's behind that is fascinating, very fascinating. So, Robyn, you have won some major awards, which I've mentioned before. In 2024, you were finalist in the Lethbridge Small Scale Art Prize. And I believe congratulations are in order because you are once again a finalist in the Lethbridge Small Scale Art Prize in 2025. And this apparently is no small feat. Would you like to just say a few words? Because I think you should. That's a marvellous achievement.
Thank you so much. You're so kind and generous, Margarita.
Not at
I
all.
love this I love this competition. It is the Lethbridge Gallery is. I think it's one of those beacon galleries that I just has values that I really love as an artist. They are really interested in storytelling and art, and that really hooks into my own philosophy about how I do my paintings. They value their artists. They're incredibly fair. They promote them. They run exceptional exhibitions. I had the privilege of going to their opening night for this award last year, and honestly, it was the best run opening I've ever been to. But they value artwork in a way that really hooks into my philosophy about these are stories that people are telling about life, and sometimes we have to tell stories that are darker, that have really deep meanings, that tap into people's grief or things that happen in their life that are not happy, wonderful moments. And we know that they exist in life. And sometimes being able to view an artwork can actually help us work through those moments that we can find really challenging. And that, to me, is the value of art, because it can help us address moments that we need to. They're opening up, and it's the essence of what art therapy is about. If you know anything about art therapy, is helping people work through challenging moments in their life. And sometimes those moments are good, and sometimes they're not so good. And so I just love that gallery, and I love this award. I feel very thankful to be in it again. The piece I entered has quite a deep meaning for me. It is flowers and glass. It's 5 flowers in 5 separate glass vases, and each flower has a meaning attached to it, and it's my story about relationships and the longing that you can have for attachment and the disappointment that sometimes happens when that attachment doesn't occur. And so the flowers represent longing, they represent disappointment. And that's the story behind that painting. And when I submitted the artist statement for it, I believe that probably got me over the line, actually. But it's a favourite painting too, and it was done out of memory. It's about my mum, actually. So it's a precious one to me, but and it just turned out really well. Sometimes you just know a painting's going to go that way, and they don't always do. But right from the moment I started, I thought, yeah, this is going to be a winner. And I'm not a winner in terms of an exhibition, but it's just going to be what I hoped it would be from conception.
Yeah, a successful piece, but bonus that it was actually a winner that got you into the finalist. And all of that weaves into beautifully into my next question or comment here, that you then were the artist in residence at Chateau or Quavo.
It's hard.
Which, yeah, like it builds on. I'm hoping what you're going to relate to us builds on what you were talking about, being in the finalists there. Would you share, please, your story behind this adventure? Because it was your talk at your recent art show that, yes, was not only inspirational, but really so intriguing with what evolved from this journey. And you mentioned the word art therapy, which was just one of the little things I was going to question you about, because it wasn't actually what you went there for, was it?
No.
Yes.
I applied for that residency. a couple of years ago, and I was meant to go last year, and for one reason or another, I couldn't go. And that ended up being a really good thing, because I think I would have just gone there and potted it away at my usual work. But the delay until this year, I was able to delay it for a year, meant that in that space of time between when I was meant to go and when I actually went, I developed a hand injury. And I was really beginning to wonder if I would actually have to stop painting, because I had a really bad tendonitis at the base of my thumb. It's called de Quervain syndrome. It's quite a common thing actually amongst artists. And I was having a real struggle just recovering from it, actually. So I went there, I went with my husband. We had a couple of weeks before the residency in France amongst gardens, and I thought, yes, this is what I'm going to do. I had a bit of an idea about how I was going to approach it, but when I actually got to the estate, it's Orquevaux is a township, and the chateau is the centre of the town, basically set up on a hill, and there's 60 people that live there. It's way out south, sort of east of Paris, in the middle of nowhere. It's a 2.5-hour fast train. But you walk onto the castle grounds, and they have acres and acres of land, and it is like heaven. It is the most beautiful place. Wildflowers everywhere. A lake. The castle's set quite high on a hill, and at the bottom is a lake, huge lake, that is fed from the mountains. And it was just impactful just walking there, the peace and serenity and the beauty of it. Was such a beautiful place. And the first thought that came into my mind was, oh gee, my mum would love it here. I don't know where that thought came from, but it just popped into my head. Now, I need to speak a little bit about my relationship with my mum here. My mum and I were very different people, but we shared a love of gardening, and it was one of the things that we connected over. And my mum died during COVID, not from COVID. She had cancer, but she died. But she lived in South Australia. I live here in New South Wales, and I was not able to see her for about 5 months before she died, right up until her death. Couldn't get there for the funeral because both states were in lockdown, and so obviously not able to say goodbye. My last communication with her was over a FaceTime call, and she was in so much pain. It lasted about 30 seconds, and then she just was crying out for medication to put, she basically was put on morphine from that point. And so I never got to say goodbye. And I know I said this at my artist talk that, we're all busy, and I think women probably especially, we are so busy holding so many balls up in the air that just became another thing that was tucked away in a box, and it was really painful. So I just left it there. And, it's 4 years since she died, and I thought, that's okay. I knew perhaps it wasn't resolved, but didn't want to go and open that box. But when I went to Orquevaux, that moment, that thought, gee, my mum would love it here, it just opened something. And to be honest, I was a bit of a mess there, and I felt really embarrassed because I was very teary the whole time. Not like me at all. And I had been looking forward to that moment for such a long time that I was quite embarrassed to be amongst other, writers and dancers and artists and musicians, and be in this state where I was emotionally really vulnerable. Yeah. But what it did, it had an amazing effect on my art, because I had intended wanted to find a different way to paint. Now, that was attached to my hand injury. I needed to find a different way to paint in order to protect my hand. So I just started this free work. I didn't do any of the usual things that I would normally do in a painting. I didn't do any pre-drawing art. I didn't, I had a loose idea of using the rule of thirds, which is an artist strategy for composition. I had a very loose thing of that. But basically, after I got over the initial where am I going to make the first mark, trauma that most artists have when you're facing a blank canvas, it was very free, and all of that emotion that I had felt just poured out into the canvas. And there were days where I was just crying in my studio. I just closed the door, and that was sort of, please don't come in today. I need a moment. And that was okay. That's what residencies are about. You can work however you like. And in that free working physically of applying paint, I actually was able to find freedom and release those emotions. And I actually felt by the time I left Orquavo that all of that grief that had been unresolved had been left there on the canvas in that studio. And instead, there was a sense of real peace and joy that I came home with. And I've retained that. I haven't felt any of that heaviness that I had before. And that to me has felt like a real blessing.
And isn't that interesting how the universe, God, source, whatever you want to call it, works in amazing ways? Because the year before, you would not have been ready for that. And then this year it all just came together, and your artwork changed and you were able to release that. It was just a beautiful journey, Robyn. Amazing.
Yeah. I think having that opportunity to be there, I mean, you are completely catered for there. You have no responsibilities other than doing what you need to do. And I don't have those kind of opportunities home here. I have responsibilities here and things I need to do. So stopping and having the moment to actually address some of those things, I think, is what I found really helpful, because I just wouldn't get that here at home.
Well, you don't, do you? You're a woman, you're a wife, you're a mother, all of those things. Yes, and building a business and painting. Yeah. So, Robyn, whatever passion we choose to pursue, there are challenges. What were some that you faced in becoming a successful artist?
Oh, it's interesting because you use the word successful artist, and I don't feel like I'm quite there yet. I don't know. I think you have hopes and dreams for yourself, and part of the challenge is realizing that sometimes those things never happen, and that's okay. Finding joy and gratitude in what you do have, I think, is really key to overcoming. I don't want to be on that hamster wheel, constantly chasing something that may or may never happen. And so I try to take and find joy and gratitude in everyday moments. And sometimes for me, that is, a moment for me might just be, I'm going to have 2 hours where I'm just going to sit out in my garden and admire the beauty in my garden today, because that's a challenge, because I don't always have 2 hours, but it's a small moment that feels like a really big win for me. I am really grateful that I was a finalist in Lethbridge, because, lots of people, they had over 800 applications this year, and I was one of, 100 or so that actually was a finalist. That feels like a win to me. A huge challenge has been the whole, how do I sell my artwork? There's loads of artists out there now, and lots of people who picked up art during COVID. We're all at varying degrees of training and skill, and it can be a challenging thing to see someone who says, "Oh, I'm self-taught and I picked up a brush, 6 months ago, and now I'm selling thousands of dollars of paintings," when I've been at it for years and years and years. And, ego needs to take a back seat, and envy and all of those things. Someone said to me recently, be careful about finding validation in art. And my response was, in my head, I didn't say it, but it was that if you're going into the art world looking for validation, you'll never find it, because you can't find that from other people in the art world. You have to love what you do and do it for yourself. And sometimes other people will love it too, but that shouldn't be the goal. The goal should be producing something that you love, and finding validation in other things, if that's what you need.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there, because finding you do what you do because you love doing what you do, don't you? And if that happens to inspire and touch other people's lives, then that's a blessing upon itself. And I really, what was the word? I lost my train of thought when you went off onto that validation tangent there. Stepping outside and finding a moment in your garden with your flowers. I step outside and just am filled with the wonders of the universe and the miracles that happen every day around me. It just fills my heart. So I totally understand where you're coming from when you say, you step out into your garden and get filled. So, Robyn, having traversed this path, what would you say have been the rewards of the journey?
Lots, actually. I think I'm really thankful for the friendship and community I've found amongst other artists. We have a group here that meets in Armidale, where I live. I started that group just recently, and I think we started with about 5 members, and now we've got about 12. And we just meet once a month for a coffee and a chat. And it's uplifting. We support one another. And I love that we can come and share the challenges and joys of our, niche, because not everyone understands what we do, and the struggles that we have in what we do. So being able to share that with like-minded people is wonderful. Some of the other challenges, the blessings are, I just think, I've just entered my 60s, and I have found something that I absolutely love that allows me to connect with people. And sometimes they're connections that are ephemeral, Instagram. I have lots of Instagram friends, and there's always this debate about whether they're real friends, but they're people I connect with, and who sometimes I have quite long chats with on Instagram. And I love that sharing of, quite often it starts about the art, but then it goes into something else a little bit deeper. And I love that kind of connection. So that's been a blessing, and it's so unusual because it's so left of field from when I was younger. And so I'm just discovering that now, that there are different ways of connecting with people. I've loved having my garden open. My garden speaks to my art, and I do my art from my garden. Those things are inextricably linked. I cannot separate them. And so when we have open garden, or people come to the house and they want to look at the garden, that brings me so much joy to talk about that and to share what we've done here, and how it affects our lives. My husband is a really busy man. He works many, many hours a week, 60, 70 hours a week sometimes. and his downtime is in the garden, and I've seen how it's regenerated him. He comes home and it's like he breathes a sigh of relief from his job, and he finds that out in the garden. And I feel the same way, but different, but similar things out in the garden. So they're the kind of things, and just being able to paint what I feel and put it on a canvas. Sometimes that feels quite raw, and you feel like you're exposing yourself because something emotional has come out on the canvas. But to date, everything has always been really well received. I've never been someone who's had horrible or negative comments made, and I feel very thankful for that, because I know other people haven't been quite as lucky. But I've been always had well received reviews of work, so that's been good.
Listening to you and your rewards there, I think what was really nice was that your husband is able to come home, and he has as much enjoyment as you do, and finding peace and solitude and washing the day's worries away with the beauty and the fragrance of the flowers. To be able to share that with your soul partner, soulmate, is to me just lovely. Robyn, you touched on so many things, which really opened my eyes. You mentioned this group with the artists, because not everybody knows what an artist goes through and feels and experiences. And just what you've mentioned today in various questions that I've asked you, wow, you've certainly opened my eyes to it. I mean, there were so many aspects that you drew and mentioned about your business, which is totally relatable to what I'm doing. And the joy of the garden, the peace and fulfillment that you have. And, you tackle a piece of work, and sometimes it just flows from you, and it's going to be a success, which you mentioned before. And then other times it's it's not hard work because you love what you do, but it's not just flowing as easily. So there are the yins and the yangs of life, aren't there?
Artwork's a discipline, and the moments when it flows are probably few and far between. You have to go out to the studio, you got to treat it like a job, and just go and do art. And that is a challenge, to get up every day knowing that you have work to do, you've got timelines. There are people that just treat it like a hobby, and that's great if you can do that. Because I've chosen to have that as my business and I make a living from it, I have to treat it like a job, and it's challenging at times when we've had snow here recently, and my studio is cold, and it's the last place I want to be on those days. But I've got a number of works at the moment I've got deadlines for, so I've got to be out there. So I'm literally rugged up like a polar bear, and I'm scarves wrapped around, beanies on, and I'm out there painting, because that's what you have to do when you have a job like this.
You do.
So.
And thank you for sharing that, because it is discipline. It is so true. With whatever you want to be good at, with the business that I'm doing, you have to be disciplined. You have to make the time to do things like you mentioned, the snow, and then with all the rain. And I've been on the tractor grading my road and all sorts of things. So, Robyn, are there any words of wisdom you would, in particular, I'm sure you've got lots of words of wisdom, but are there particular words of wisdom you would like to share with our listeners? You mentioned a few in our previous conversation, which I hope you remember, because they were just really spot on.
I'm just going to have a little quick referral to my.
Sorry,
that's all right. No, change is always really difficult. And before, I was a music teacher for 25 plus years before I went into this. I have a music degree, and I kind of morphed into doing art while I was at there. Before I went into teaching, when I was a teenager, I loved art. I loved music. My parents didn't want me to do either because there was no money in it. I couldn't make a living from it. And I did what my mum did, which was I went and became a secretary. Actually, that's how I started my life. I was an executive assistant. And then when I had earned enough money, I put myself through university. And at that stage, I was really into music. So I became a music teacher, did that. We then went to live overseas for a while, came back, and I felt like I needed more creativity. And that's when I started re-exploring my artwork. I went back to university once again and started a fine arts degree. I never finished it because I had 3 young children, but I learned the first 2 years the skill level. I managed to get all of that, and that change was huge because I was in my 40s then, and with 3 young children, and it seemed like a huge mountain to climb, but because I loved it enough, I just chipped away with it. I took each day as it came rather than thinking, oh, this is going to take me years to do. And I just did what I could when I could, and eventually I'm at this place, and I'm still learning. I never think that, oh, I'm finally here. I learn every day. I'm looking at things, trying different things, trying new ways of doing things for my business or in the studio. I want to be learning till the day I die. I don't ever want to stop. So my encouragement.
Sorry, go.
I was just going to say my encouragement to anyone would be to do that. Don't ever stop. Just find something you love that you're passionate about. Take the first step. Don't try and take 10. Just take 1 and chip away at it 1 step at a time. And find joy in the first step and the second step and the third step, rather than thinking, I'll be happy when I get to step 10. Just find little moments of joy along the way.
Absolutely brilliant. Yes. You mentioned in our talk, you mentioned the word find rewards. So for each little step, reward yourself as if it's even if it's just a pat on the back. Congratulations, you've done this. And what came loud and clear, my gosh, we could have had a whole conversation on what got you to becoming an artist in those early years, starting off as a secretary. But what comes to mind there is the ability to pivot. When the heart's desire is strong enough, you will find a way of pivoting. And what you said there was to do what you can do with what you have at that point in time. And you've climbed mountains. So, congratulations for that. And thank you so much for sharing your journey with us today. Wow, I thought I, had glossed over and got some information previously, but I just learned so much more from our interview today. Thank you, Robyn, very much for sharing your story today. It's been such a pleasure to interview you.
Thank you so much for having me, Margarita.
Oh, yeah, our pleasure. And to my listeners, I look forward to sharing yet another story of another extraordinary, ordinary woman with heart, Margarita.